Spring, imagine being the fan base that has to suffer through 5 games of Minnesota Wild hockey in round 1 of the playoffs this year. Because that was... I'm surprised I'm awake to do a show right now. That was an absolute snooze fest, and I didn't think it could get any more boring than it was for the first 3 periods. But then we proceeded to watch maybe the worst representation of 3-on-3 overtime that you could possibly see in the NHL, where Minnesota possessed the puck for 3 minutes and 45 seconds of that overtime period, and 6 different times. Not only did they exit the zone, but they essentially iced the puck on themselves. That was unfreaking watchable. And you know what? Mission accomplished for the Avs. Second leg of a back-to-back. You went into a division rival. You got a point. And you guys know me. As long as you get a point in overtime, I could give 2 fucks about the extra one.
Well, yeah, I mean, they had to get on an airplane last night. Avs 6-game win streak comes to an end. Let's see. Minnesota hasn't been playing that well of late. Want to look at Minnesota's recent results. I know they've lost a few here. Yeah, they lost 2. They lost to Vancouver. They lost to Pittsburgh at home. You lost to Pittsburgh at home. I guess a get-right game for Minnesota. Look, it goes to show, especially when you got to get on an airplane and you're playing the second night of a back-to-back and Minnesota coming off a loss to Pittsburgh, they were motivated. Now, they didn't play overly well. It goes to show that as long as you're solid, if you get decent goaltending, and Philip Gustafsson was pretty good tonight, you can win in this league on any given night. This was not an indication of you can't really. I wouldn't extrapolate much from this. Let me start here. There's a lot to say. Here's a comment from Brennan. Let's work backwards to forward here. We found Mackenzie Blackwood's weakness. Geez, that was rough. Look, one thing about Alexander Georgiev, he was nails in shootouts.
He was.
So Blackwood in the shootout, the 2 goals he allows, and granted, who cares? The shootout is a regular season thing, and breakaways in regular season, in playoff play, in regular season play, they're much faster. It's real bang bang. You don't have time to do this weave shit. So Blackwood's not going to have to deal with that in the playoffs. That being said, both of Mackenzie Blackwood's save attempts, I'm surprised. He was very tight. He was very scrunch.
Yeah, he made himself look small.
Yeah, I would like to see him get bigger. He leaves that strong side for the lefty Zuccarello wide open. It just easily able to flick that forehand in past a small Blackwood. And then on the Boldy goal, he kind of does the same thing and bites on the forehand real easily. Boldy beats him with the backhand. Ultimately, look, McKinnon's attempt, I thought it was one too many stick handles. He got too tight on Gustafsson. If he would have fired that puck a stick handle before, maybe he has an opening on the forehand side, and then Marty Necas just freaking fumbles the thing. So it was a disaster of a shootout. Now, the overtime was pretty good. Nichushkin gets the Nichushkin backhand look. That maybe is the difference in this game. Good save by Gustafsson with the pad. Nichushkin, if he just gets that a little higher, that game's over. Girard had a good attempt, but that was almost too easy for Gustafsson. Okay, you beat Blackwood in a shootout, and Blackwood was terrible in the shootout. Fine, whatever.
Who cares?
Yeah.
Who honestly cares about the extra point? Again, if you guys have been listening to the show for many, many years, I've done the case studies about just getting to overtime is the win in and of itself, regardless if you're on a back-to-back or not. So, like this extra point for Minnesota, I don't think it's going to change anything in the standings. I kind of think the Central is set. I think going into the playoffs, you're going to have Colorado at 3, Dallas at 2, Winnipeg at 1, and Minnesota as the wild card 1, likely facing off against whoever wins the Pacific Division. So I feel bad for Vegas fans, or I feel bad for Edmonton fans, because you're going to have to watch that John Hines crap. And I was texting Connor McGahey, the broadcast team in Minnesota, they hate that style of hockey too. Like it is You could hear the groaning in the crowd in overtime. Just like, give us something fun. And it's such a shame because the state of Minnesota has such fun hockey everywhere else. Like the collegiate teams are fun and offensive minded and pace minded. Obviously, the high school teams are. The Minnesota State tournament, which just happened last weekend or just wrapped up last weekend, is electric every single year. And then the best team in the state, the premier team in the state, the professional team, is just a snooze fest. I don't think they're that dangerous. Without Kirill Kaprizov, there really isn't much to write home about. I'm not nervous about Mackenzie Blackwood in the shootout. Like it really doesn't matter to me whatsoever. That said, we have been watching Matt Zuccarello do the same shootout move for 15 years. So maybe there's a little bit of like a pre-scout on number 36. He's been doing that since the year 2011. We know what he's doing. He just holds it out. He holds his stick out that was made for Zdeno Chara, even though Matt Zuccarello is 5'7", and then he just flicks his wrist, and somehow it beats you short side every time. He's been doing it for 15 years.
Yeah,
I kind of love it.
Hit the film room. I don't know where how big of an emphasis is that, especially second night of a back-to-back. Like, you only have so much time to. They're focused on Chicago last night. I guess they didn't get deep enough in the film study over an abbreviated window. Got to get on the plane. Got to get situated. They didn't make it to Zuccarello's shootout move.
They didn't get into Minnesota until 4 a.m. last night.
Well, and Mackenzie Blackwood is a huge reason why they get a point. He was good tonight. He made the saves he needed to make. The only goal he allows. I mentioned the Nichushkin miss. If that's not that wasn't the difference in the game. The difference in the game was that god awful Marty Necas turnover. I don't know what the hell that pass was.
Pretty bad.
Back behind him into the defensive zone. Why would you assume that that's a good pass? Like, you're not even looking. That was a no-look pass behind you into the heart of the Wild offensive zone. Why are you making that pass? Now, okay, Marty Necas made a mistake. Guess what? Every single NHL player is going to make a mistake at some point. We finally saw one from Marty Necas. Took us about, like a month here for that to happen. So, okay. I thought that, I thought, that this game is winding down in the third period, and I'm thinking that's going to be the difference in the game. That dumbass Marty Necas turnover. Look, shout out to Sam Malinsky. Plays again, gets back in the lineup, had 2 assists in his last game, gets a secondary assist. It's a calm play from Malinsky to feed Girard, and Girard tore nods, and Girard throw pucks on net. Screw it. Just throw pucks on net, and Yoel Kiviranta, his 15th goal of the season. Holy shit, who had Yoel Kiviranta scoring 15 goals this year? No wonder he gets the nod to stay up on the third line instead of Logan O'Connor, instead of Miles Wood. Now, Miles Wood is an easy choice, but Kiviranta, third liner, 15 goals. Love it.
15 goals for Yoel Kiviranta. He's got 4 straight with a goal scoring today. He has as many as Alexis Lafreniere, former number 1 overall pick, who's played 58 games this year. He has the same amount of goals as Matty Beniers, former number 3 pick, ? I can't remember when Beniers went, but he went very early.
Was he the first overall pick, actually?
Was Matty Beniers a number 1 pick?
Was that the Kraken's first draft pick in their history?
I don't know if they had number 1 overall, though. Beniers feels like he was the pick after Owen Power.
That sounds right. Second overall.
So was he after Power in that draft?
Gotta be.
He has as many goals this year as the greatest American-born forward of all time, Patrick Kane. He has as many goals as former number 1 overall prospect, Shane Wright, who ended up falling down to, I believe, number 6 in his draft class. He has as many goals this season as Nick Schmaltz and Teuvo Teravainen, who are 2 of Utah and Chicago's most important offensive players.
How about that? No, that's an impressive list. That's good work right there, Raj. Yeah, no, Yoel Kiviranta outscoring a handful of very solid NHL players. Hey, Brennan, it's your night. I'm going to put this one up again. Look, the Stars might have Mikko Rantanen, but the Avs have former star Yoel Kiviranta. Look, he did it to the Avs in the bubble. Maybe he's the difference in what seems like a very likely Avs Stars series. Kiviranta game-winning goal, Game 7. Let's go.
I
History
hope it
repeats
doesn't go.
itself.
I hope it doesn't go 7. But those two teams are so good. Like, it's such a travesty that if you look at the Western Conference right now, if you just take a quick peek at the standings, because Gary Bettman is so hell bent on keeping the playoffs as they are, we unfortunately get the number 2 team in the West against the number 4 team in the West this year. That's a shame, because right now what it should be, if you are 1 through 8, Winnipeg should face Calgary, Los Angeles should go on the road against Dallas, or if you want to re-implement, like if you win your division, you automatically get a 1 seed. I'm cool with that. I would be totally fine with that. So let's say that's the case. Vegas then plays Los Angeles. The 3 seed would be Dallas taking on Minnesota, and we would get a first round series of Connor McDavid and Nathan McKinnon. The West is so
It's not
loaded.
much better.
It isn't much better, but the West is so freaking loaded right now that there might not be a good way out of this. It just feels wrong that number 2 and number 4 have to face off against one another.
Well, the only way really to get a favorable matchup in the Western Conference is either to win the Central and play Minnesota. Now, Kirill Kaprizov might be back for the playoffs. I just looked into it. It looks like he still could be back for the playoffs. And that will make Minnesota more dangerous. But so winning the Central and getting Minnesota, or I mean, the Avs, they can't be in the Pacific Division unless something changes, and you win that division and you get Calgary. And that's who the Avs will play next. That would be awesome. Or, you're one of the 2, 3. If you're the 2 in the Pacific facing the Kings to me are a little weak. So really the Avs' only way to get a favorable matchup in this year's playoffs would have been to win the Central. But guess what? It just wasn't your year. It was Winnipeg's year, at least from a regular season perspective. The injuries that the Avs faced to start the season, the Nichushkin suspension, the poor goaltending to start the season, injuries throughout, really not solidifying this lineup until the past week with an awesome trade deadline. So it's just the way this season went. It wasn't in the cards. They were never going to win the Central this year. It was always, it was inevitable. It's just a matter of home ice at this point for an Avalanche Stars first round matchup. But look, I mentioned the trade deadline, and hey, another difference in this game tonight. Brock Nelson hits a post, it's a crossbar in the first half of this game. That Brock thought that thing went in. He thought that was barred down. It wasn't. Brock Nelson hits another short side post. Nice feed from Marty Natchez. He ends up kind of making up for that awful mistake. Stands for the shootout attempt. But Nelson hits 2 posts. Nelson looks good. I thought Charlie Coyle hasn't really had his moment yet, save for the primary assist on that game-tying Drouin goal in his debut that made it 4-4 against who the shit did they play? I can't even remember, but it made it 4-4.
Toronto.
Toronto, that's right. So Coyle's still waiting to, that third line's finding its way. Kiviranta gets the goal, but really I think that third line of Coyle, Colton, and Kiviranta, like we've noticed it from the second line. The Nelson, Nichushkin, Drouin line. Like we've noticed like that thing's clicking. Not quite so much from the Coyle, Colton, Kiviranta line. Here's one play that stands out to me. Late second period, Avs have an offensive zone. They have extended offensive zone time with the third line. Ross Colton, there's about 30 seconds left in the second period. Ross Colton gets a puck with space around him at the left point, and he just fires this weak, nothing ground ball up the middle that's easily scooped up by the Wild and cleared out of the zone. I love that play back from Ross Colton to not just turn the puck over easily in that moment. So the third line, and I think Charlie Coyle is going to be great. I still believe in Colton. We talked about Kiviranta's 15 goals. I believe in that line. We just haven't seen it quite yet.
Yeah, not on the offensive side, you haven't, but I do believe they're very stout on defense. Charlie Coyle is already, um, he may automatically be your best penalty killer on the team right now without even having played all that much in burgundy and blue. Bednar raved about his abilities at 4-on-3 and at 5-on-3, where he played really well against Chicago last night. And then this evening, when the Avs had those two back-to-back chances in overtime, Spring, you obviously mentioned the Nichushkin chance, and then uh, was it Natchez that had the other really good one?
Gerard had a backhand chance right after
Gerard, it
that.
was Gerard.
Nate
Thank
just,
you.
yeah.
Gerard had that little backhand chance. Charlie Coyle goes out right after that. So when they need to tamp down defensively, when there's a lot of space on the ice, Coyle has already checked that box off for them, and I appreciate that. I think Coyle was added to the lineup not for scoring. He's never been like a big time scorer in this league. It was size, dependability, really good penalty killer, and a guy who you know isn't going to have the puck go in his own net all that often. I don't know if there's a play that I'd really want back outside of the Natchez play. I understand the Colton one. It just felt like a low event hockey game, and it's so funny that we pick out the Ross Colton shot at the end of the second after you have a really good shift from that fourth line from that third line. It's funny that the goal that ties the game up is this weak spinorama backhand from 55 feet that Sam Girard throws at the net, and Colton tries to tip in with his hand. He misses it. It chips off
What
the
was
stick
Ross
of
doing
Kiwi
there?
Ranta. I don't know. Put it in the net
Because
anyway.
that's they review it for like a hand pass / hand
Right.
play. Ross is trying to do that. That's illegal. You can't. Luckily, he didn't touch it. But what are you doing?
It's odd that that's the play that goes in. This weak little saucy backhand, just throw something at the net and hope it goes in. Rather than the backdoor chance that Nichushkin has and the post that they hit constantly throughout the game. That's the one that ties it and gets you the point. Good job for them to get the point. Bummer you didn't get the second, but honestly, I think if you ask that locker room, certainly if you ask Bednar, mission accomplished as you go into Minnesota today.
Well, that's a credit to Blackwood's regulation performance. When you are getting some scoring chances, and it was a little weak in the scoring chances department, but still, we've mentioned a handful of them scattered throughout. When you're out shooting your opponent on the road, they ultimately outshoot them 28-23. Let's see. Wild win the first period, 6-5 shots on goal, but then 13-8 for the Avs in the second, tied at 8 in the third period. So in regulation, they outshoot the Wild. You're gonna get one. You're gonna get one, even if it's a weird, dumb play. Sometimes that's the sport, right? So that's a credit to Blackwood, who kept him in this game. Unfortunately, the Wild took advantage of overtime strategies that can be used.
They got to change that, man. The league's got to change that. It's one of the biggest things that they have to find a way to address is I don't even want to watch 3-on-3 hockey anymore. It was so fun, so exciting when they introduced it all those years ago. So exciting when the World Cup of Hockey had it, and it was back and forth, and teams taking chances and crazy offensive plays and speed, and it just had you sitting on the edge of your seat. And now, unfortunately, as all sports do, they take the excitement out of it when there's a few years to go. Remember how awesome it was when we were first watching the Golden State Warriors and Steph Curry and Klay Thompson put up all those threes and drastically changed the game. It was fun. And then the rest of the league went, oh, there's data behind this. Let's actually put the nerds to go to work here. And now the 3-point shot has alienated some fans from the game because it's done too much. It has taken away a large portion of the game. The nerds got to 3-on-3 as well, and it didn't take them very long. It was, well, it's very clear that if you have the puck, you have a greater chance to win the hockey game. So don't take any chances unless it is 100% grade A, and then you go. It's the reason why the Avs don't really fare all that well in 3-on-3 overtime, because when their skill guys get the puck, they just go. They try and make something happen, and it's fun. You lose the games, but honestly, again, if you get to overtime in the regular season, that's all that fucking matters. The league has to put in some sort of restraining line rule. If you exit the offensive zone under your own volition, you cannot cross back over. I think half ice is a little too restrictive because it's so small in the neutral zone now. It's not the old zones where the blue lines were, if I'm correct, 6 feet farther in toward the net before they made that big change and took out 2 line passes. But if you leave the offensive zone under your own power, you're not forced out of it immediately by a defenseman. You should not be able to take the puck back across your own defensive blue line. If you do so, it's a penalty immediately, and it's a 4-on-3 power play for the opposition.
Well, I mean, what do you think about a shot clock? Probably a little. I don't know what the number would be.
I don't love forcing a team to give up possession of the puck. I don't love that, but I do love the idea of forcing them to go do something active, to go attack. Because like, what happens if it's, it's a 25-second shot clock and you got the puck, up in the, you're pinned on the boards. What happens there? Like, the shot clock goes off. Do we call it dead and then it's a face off? Is it a delay of game and a penalty against? I don't know if that one works for me.
Well, yeah, and we've seen teams do more egregious things than what the Wild did in overtime. We've seen teams just hold the puck behind their own net. We've seen teams. I remember one against the Oilers and McDavid. They were so scared of getting of McDavid touching that puck in 3-on-3 overtime that they just chilled in their D zone. And we're just like, we're just going to let this clock wind down. So, yeah, the good news, though, is, look, hey, if they end up missing out on the 2 seed by a point, okay, we can look back on this tomfoolery and say, damn you, Minnesota Wild. But look, that's gamesmanship. They're a division rival. It is what it is. And you got the point. There goes the dream of tying Dallas on Sunday. That road was, now Dallas would have had a couple games in hand still, but that dream is now dead. Now, that being said, you can still go get 2 points in Calgary. And Calgary, to me, is a weak team. We saw Colorado go there before the Four Nations break and win something like 4-1. Calgary, to me, is a fake team. Vancouver's a little more dangerous down there below them. So if you get the 2 points on Friday night, and hey, they're going to have some time off here, not playing until Friday night. So get those 2 points, win the biggest regular season game of all time on Sunday, and you could be as close as still just 1 point behind Dallas. So the dream is very much so still alive.
I still think it's really tough to catch them. I understand it's there. It is there. And getting a point tonight helps. Like, it's giving up the extra point to Minnesota isn't really that big. With Kaprizov having surgery and being out long term, they don't know when he's coming back. Likely not until the playoffs is my guess. They're not catching you. Minnesota is not catching you. I do think they are destined to be a wild card team. It remains to be seen if Calgary can catch them or Vancouver's on the outside looking in. Obviously, LA, as you mentioned there before. It is a good year, Spring, to be one of those top 2 seeds because the middle of the West is so heavy. The bottom side of the West feels like Colorado against Nashville a couple of years ago. And it's a good year to be Winnipeg. It's a good year to be whoever wins the Pacific. I think because the drop-off from the group of LA, Minnesota, Calgary, Vancouver, let's call it that group of teams, to the current 2 through 5 right now of Dallas, Colorado, Edmonton, and who am I missing? Vegas?
Yep. Those are your only content. Those are the only teams. I will be shocked. I will actually say there is a 0.1% chance that the Western Conference team representing the West in the Stanley Cup Finals will be a team outside of the top 5. A team outside of Winnipeg, Dallas, Colorado, Vegas, and Edmonton. It will be one of those 5 teams.
Right.
So, yeah, it's a good year to be one of the 1 seeds. You're getting a very easy matchup in the first round.
When you see those low seeds win Stanley Cup championships, there's typically one thing that they have, and that's an elite or a mega hot goaltender. Do any of those teams outside the top 5 have it? Like, Darcy Kemper has the Stanley Cup ring, but is he that guy? Probably not at this point in his career. Dustin Wolf has a really good case to win the Calder Trophy this year. Like, he has a case to be a Vezina Trophy finalist, let alone Calder Trophy. He's not going to win either. But is he going to be able to do that as, I think Dustin Wolf's like 23 years old? I would argue probably not. There's not many first-time rookie goaltenders that do that. Like, the last guy to actually do that, being that young, was Cam Ward with the Carolina Hurricanes back in the mid-2000s. I know Jordan Binnington did it, but he had been playing pro hockey for a handful of years. I think Binnington was like 27 or 28 when he backstopped St. Louis from worst to first when they won in 7 games against Boston. I don't really see Philip Gustafsson ain't that guy.
No, unless they would need Kaprizov. I guess Minnesota's the only one who maybe could do it if Kaprizov is healthy. Because, like, okay, take for example, like, remember when the Kings won Stanley Cup as an 8 seed? Well, they had like Drew Doughty in his prime. They had Jonathan Quick. Like, if the Avs were an 8 seed, if they weren't as aggressive on the trade market, but they still, had Blackwood in net. I'm talking, leading up to the deadline. Hell, even so, you never know what. Like, if the Avs were to somehow fall to the 8th seed, well, you have Makar and McKinnon, 2 future Hall of Famers in their prime. You have Blackwood. Like, okay, that checks some boxes of an 8th seed that can do it. Like, in the Eastern Conference, if Tampa was to somehow fall, Ottawa's won 4 straight. If Tampa was to fall, well, you have Vasilevsky. You got Kucherov and Point. Like, okay, you could do it. I would say the Rangers, but man, you sold just a little too much at the deadline, so I'm almost going to cross you off the list. But it takes a team
they got the
like
goalie, though.
They do have Shesterkin. So, you could throw like a team like New York. If Tampa were to fall, if the Avs were to fall, maybe if Kaprizov is back for, and I'll look, Vancouver has Quinn Hughes, but guess what? You traded JT Miller. Elias Pettersson isn't who we thought he was a few years.
Dude, is that the worst contract in hockey right now?
It's bad. It's bad. But they have a Quinn Hughes, but guess what? Like, you don't have enough, and you traded JT Miller. You don't have the goalie, really. So, yeah, winning as an 8 seed can happen, but you got to have these certain elements that I'm not really seeing across the league right now, unless like Colorado falls or maybe a Tampa falls.
Elias Pettersson, $11.6 million, Spring, is what he's making right now.
I didn't realize it was 11.6. Mike, that's $400,000 less than Mikko Rantanen.
This is the first year of an 8-year extension for Elias Pettersson that pays him through the age of 34. He currently has 3 fewer goals than Joel Kiviranta. Let's bring it all full circle back to the beginning of the show. Elias Pettersson has 36 points, is a -11 in 57 games played for a Vancouver team that we all thought was going to take the next step this year. And lo and behold, talk about bringing it full circle back to the first year between the pipes. Remember how much we loved that core? It's never gotten it done. And Elias Pettersson, he might be the biggest anchor in the NHL right now. If he doesn't turn it around and turn what's going to be he'll finish this season with 50 points at the most. If he doesn't double his point production year over year, it's the worst contract in the league.
And maybe they wanted to trade Pettersson instead of Miller, but they simply couldn't because nobody wanted that god-awful contract that has, 7, 8 years left on it?
It's in the first of an 8-year deal, as 7 more after this season.
That's at 11.6. That's a nightmare. So that's brutal for the Vancouver Canucks, and it's a shame because, Quinn Hughes is a great player. I mean, Cale Makar's better, but Quinn Hughes is right there. He is the 1B. Speaking of that, and I will say for Minnesota tonight, their best player is Brock Faber. and
He's a freak.
and so you talk about some young defensemen in the league. Who's the Canadians have this young stud, Lane Hudson.
Lane Hudson, his younger brother Cole is a stud right now at Boston University.
Yeah, I had seen about him as well. Speaking of brothers, what are the odds that Taylor McCarr plays for the Avs down the stretch?
Minimal.
Okay.
0. There's so much like they're healthy scratching Miles Wood.
Yeah.
Like, no, there's 0 chance that Cale Makar plays this year. Is there a chance they could sign him as a draft pick after he's done with I think he's probably done with his collegiate years now that he's transferred over to Maine. Maybe he's got one more year left. He'll be at rookie camp. He'll get some time in the preseason next year, maybe if he makes the jump. He's not coming in this year. They've got like 16 forwards they can use right now.
Mm-hmm. I'd seen some people throw it out there.
Nah.
I don't know how good. I mean, obviously he's not his brother, and he's a forward, right? Taylor McCarr's a forward.
He's a forward, and I think he was like a 7th round pick.
Yeah, so he got a big body. Like I've seen him. He's a little bigger than his brother Cale. But yeah, 7th round pick. It's funny how the genes sometimes only go to one. But hey, look, playing collegiate hockey, getting drafted,
genetic lottery.
Still no joke. But Cale's, that's your brother's a Hall of Famer.
Well, how's it work for the Hughes family then?
That's pretty good across the board. I'm surprised. I'm surprised that Quinn's the best. I'm surprised. I thought Jack was going to be the best. I'm surprised.
Luke is going to be good. Luke feels like Brock Faber light. Quinn's elite. He is. He's not Cale, but he's elite.
Yep.
And Jack, it's a shame Jack got hurt because I thought Jack was making the right steps this year to lead New Jersey on like a decent run. The Four Nations didn't help him because he looked so perimeter in the Four Nations and he wasn't dangerous whatsoever, but he started to look a little bit more mature, a little bit thicker. Maybe there's that growth in him coming up soon, but he kind of feels like, Macklin Celebrini is going to be Jack Hughes within a year and a half. And then Celebrini is going to overtake him as that type of player, if that makes sense.
That makes sense. Speaking of, look, man, the winner of the Pacific, which right now would be Vegas, man, what a treat they're in for. Vancouver is hosting the Canadiens tonight. We're midway through this game. It is 3-0 Canadiens in Vancouver.
Montreal isn't dead, dude.
Yeah. They're still right there. Detroit is still right there. That little Dobosh goaltender that they have is fun. And then,
they love him.
They've got goals tonight from like all their young dudes. Let's see. Cole Caulfield has scored. Nick Suzuki has scored. Uri Slavkovsky has scored. So
that's the trifecta for Montreal. That's exactly who you want to see scoring goals, man.
That's exactly what you want to see.
Yeah, Montreal's got 2 games in hand on Columbus, who sits just 4 points ahead of them, sitting in wild card 2 in the East. Montreal is very much alive. Every team but Philly, Pittsburgh, and Buffalo is alive in the East.
Hey, shout out to the Carolina Hurricanes, who since the Mikko Rantanen trade are 2-0. They with a nice win over Winnipeg, and then tonight beating Tampa 4-1. Let's see. No points for Logan Stankoven. Sean Walker scored tonight for the Carolina Hurricanes, but shout out to the Canes.
Jack Roslovic Spring, he scored tonight, and he's got the best story of the whole trade.
And what's that?
He had to give up he gave up the number 96 when Mikko was traded from Colorado to Carolina. And among other things, Mikko bought him a Rolex. And then Mikko got traded. Jack still has the Rolex and then got number 96 back after the span of like 14 games.
Hey, if you're Jack Roslovic and Jack Roslovic alone, that's a massive win.
What a story.
You got a free Rolex and your number back.
It's the best thing ever. He scored tonight too. What are the other exciting scores tonight? I saw Alexei Protas scored for for Washington. We don't have a goal from Alexander Ovechkin. I don't think Ovi's getting it done this year. I think he's going to be tantalizingly close, but I don't think he gets it done.
What is he, 9 away?
He is 9 goals away.
So, okay, we got a month left.
He is scoring this year at a .67 goals per game pace, so he can get it done. He can certainly get it done. That I think if he scores at half a goal per game, he would get it done on like the second to last or the last game of the season. I just feel like he's going to be sitting there at like 893 when the season's over, and then the NHL schedule makers next year will be able to just front load home games for Washington, and maybe you front load it with like 2 Pittsburgh Penguins games in the first 2 games of the year, where Pittsburgh just goes to Washington on, Wednesday and a Friday to start the season. And he's got a chance to either tie it or break it in that game. And then the next chase is, can Ovi get to 900? I just have a feeling that's the way it's gonna pan out.
You mentioned the Penguins, and the Penguins they've won 2 in a row. We mentioned earlier in the show how Minnesota was coming off of a home loss to the Pittsburgh Penguins. Tonight, the Penguins beat the Golden Knights in overtime. 2 goals for Sidney Crosby. Erik Karlsson scored. They ended up not trade. I mean, look, I know they were probably never going to trade Crosby. They ended up not trading Erik Karlsson. Probably more realistic that they could have moved him, as certainly if they would have eaten a good chunk of that contract with just, I think, 1 more year left on his deal after this. Hey, good for you. You got a couple wins here. And look, Brock Nelson, Charlie Coyle, it makes me like, I'll take that. I would have loved Sid. But that, if you're not going to get Sid, man, that's damn near close to the next best thing.
They did a great job. McFarland was fantastic at the trade deadline. The 2 goals from Crosby leaves him, because he's also chasing something of a pretty big historic value, not just Alexander Ovechkin with the chase for 894 and Wayne Gretzky's all-time scoring mark. Crosby right now is tied with Wayne Gretzky for 19 straight point per game seasons. He can break it and have number 20 this year with the 2 goals this evening. Spring, give me 1 second, because he had 23 goals going into this game. He had 21 going into the game. He has 23 now. Okay, so they've updated it on NHL.com. Crosby is currently sitting at 70 points with 65 games played. He is on pace to get that. He needs just 12 points in Pittsburgh's final 17 games of the season, and he would become the first player in NHL history to have 20 straight seasons where he averages at least a point per game.
Oh, it's better than winning a Stanley Cup. That's what we live for right there. Hang a banner.
I'm trying to find fun ways to watch one of my favorite.
No, I know. I actually like that. That's good. Hang a banner, though, up in Pittsburgh. Hey, didn't win a cup in the late stages of Crosby's career. Didn't even come close, actually. But Crosby broke Gretzky's goal or points per game over a 20-year stretch record. Woohoo!
It's a very wordy banner, Spring.
Yeah.
All right, brother. I think that's about it for tonight's sleepy hockey game. I'm not spending much time on that. I'm not learning much from that game. It was mission accomplished. He got the point. Avs will be off for a couple of days now. You won't see them play until Friday evening at Calgary. 7 p.m. is when that puck drops. 6:30 p.m. pregame show on Altitude Sports Radio 92.5 that evening. And then the big one, they come back to face Dallas. 1:30 p.m. at Ball Arena. On Sunday on TNT, on Max, and here in the Mile High City. I can't wait to watch it. That's going to be the ticket, man. That's the biggest regular season game of the year in the NHL.
Yeah, no, you go win in Calgary on Friday, and then you go win at home against the Stars on Sunday, and nobody is going to give a damn about tonight's game.
Not at all. All right, for Spring, I'm Raj. Thank you guys so much for watching Between the Pipes this evening. If you missed any of it, just download the podcast wherever you get it. We'll have that up in about 7-8 minutes for right now. You can get it on Apple, Spotify, literally wherever you guys get your podcast. So if you missed any of the show, listen back to it either tonight as you hit the pillow or tomorrow morning. Tune in 6 a.m. for Brett Kane. Vic and Moj will join him from 7 to 10. And Spring and I'll be back on Friday night. Avs lose, but who cares?